This is a 10-minute presentation, so I will be giving it myself, but we will take the questions together, and Maria and Baruch and myself will answer questions in the coming days as well. So we represent the artistic collective, this Novation. I just need the clicker to advance the slides, or I could just tell somebody to advance them. So for 12 years, we have set up an art and research collective called This Novation. It's a collective where we try to set up custom teams for each project linked to intellectual and research and practical issues and questions and topics that we want to explore further. All these projects happen with artists, intellectuals, researchers, but also with the academic world, which is connected to what we just heard. Having both at the same time a special place for critical discussions with scientists, but also at the same time, our thoughts, our practices, our provocations, have them circulate in the academic world and change the typology of the debate. I will speak relatively quickly about the forms that it takes. Of course, we have exhibits, tools going around online that can be appropriated, transformed, etc. But we're also developing exhibitions and books like the one you can see here, which is a bestiary of the Anthropocene, which is a project that observes the level of artificialization at the planetary level that we have reached, and through a compilation of hybrid beings that we cohabitate with through the various classic fields of the living. We have composed a form of stock taking of the hybridation at the planetary level. So it's a critical compilation that helps us observe the level of artificialization, the impact of radiation, the impact of microplastics, the different types of impacts and anthropic impacts and consequences. This book also takes the form of exhibits, and it gathers 60 artifacts that are observed and gathered in the book. As I was saying, since 2018, our research has explored the tensions between economic growth and ecological crisis, and we are trying to see historically how, by following this thread, we can see our contemporary issues differently through this very specific filter. The different levels of correlation between the effects of economic growth and the different ecosystemic, climatic, and biodiversity crises that we are experiencing currently, how it sheds light in a critical way and in a very productive and stimulating way that allows us to take charge and develop an ability to act on the situation. So today we will we'll look at a series of projects, more formal and practical projects that we call the post-growth prototypes. As I was saying, we have a lot of research between arts and science and try to translate them in a tangible way, most notably by focusing on some of the interviews produced, by taking away key notions that seemed particularly important at the moment. So I will focus on a few of them quickly. The first notion we tried to develop these prototypes around, it was to pinpoint the complexity of understanding intrinsic value of ecosystems or of the biosphere. So of course, we have a very economic approach to the world. Of the system of the economic and political system where we live. So we are capable of understanding the notion of value. So we have an installation where the goal is to question the idea of intrinsic value. What do ecosystems give to everything that we depend on and that we enjoy constantly? So for this experiment, we just planted the 1 square meter of wheat that is cultivated separately from any ecosystems. It's in a black room, in a black box, so to speak. So very simply, we quickly were obligated to make visible everything that 1 square meter of wheat depends on for survival. So we made very visible the dependence on water, on sunlight, on wind, nutrients, and etc. The second thing we could do is play at the economy, so to speak, and to start to quantify and assess how much it would count to make 1 square meter of vegetation survive if we did not have the ecosystems, or if the ecosystems were damaged beyond responding to the expectations that we have of them. So with this counterintuitive process, we found that 1 kilo of wheat would be $300 instead of 30 cents as it costs today. So it is a scale of 1,000 times more. This was not about quantifying exactly or mathematically, but rather to make visible the scale by which things would be more expensive, to make their intrinsic value closer to their true value. A little excerpt of the forms that these projects have taken. We have a video introduction that sets the main principles of the project, and then I will show you the plastic forms.
The life support system experiment consists of 1 square meter of wheat cultivated artificially in a closed environment. All inputs, such as water, light, heat, and nutrients, are measured, monitored, and displayed for the public. This 1 square meter unit is capable of furnishing 1 day's worth of necessary caloric nutrition for 1 human adult every 4 months. To feed a single human adult would require approximately 100 such units running continuously. This procedure makes palpable the orders of magnitude of material and energy flows that are required to reproduce human nutritional requirements in closed or artificial environments, in contrast to outdoor agriculture on arable land. By attempting to grow a staple food such as wheat, which has historically provided the greatest proportion of necessary caloric intake for humans in Europe, this indoor farm experiment is a counterexample which points to the vastness of the ecosystem contributions involved in conventional agriculture.
So, of course, it's very paradoxical as an experiment, but it is through this paradoxical system that we were able to shed light on the aberrations that are part of our of how we give intrinsic value to ecosystems. So here we can see how this experiment is measured and quantified in a way in real time when it is when the exhibit is shown. The exhibit lasts for 3 months every time, which is the time of a natural cycle for wheat. It's very empirical and it's adjusted and self-regulating until the harvest of the resulting wheat, which rarely produces the expected kilogram. Then I will get back to the processes that Maria mentioned earlier. We produce these different projects based on a number of interviews that we led for years with researchers. And one of the main questions we asked was how to put these notions to work. It's all very well and good to collect ideas, but how do you make it actionable, useful, how to put it to work in everyday life? And one of the strategies that we adopted was creating space time in order to make these notions actionable that have exchange and criticism through games. These games are presented at the Canadian Cultural Centre at the moment, and basically, this is a context that we produced to have people sit around the table for 40 minutes, an hour, and put to work these notions by exploring their limits, their contradictions, and exploring the issues of the possible end of fossil energies and the consequences on the structure of our society. And this is the system of public interviews we had set up, and I would just like to give you a quick excerpt of the form that these interviews had taken, where we had taken away one key concept that seemed very crucial to us. Here we have with Jeffrey Boker,
There's something of a
who
saying
is
in my field
theoretician and
that geodiversity
scientist.
begets biodiversity, that you need to have a diverse geological setting in order to create the set of niches that you need for various life forms to specialize. So again, it's not thinking about Earth as the background and life here. It's about the diversity, our geological diversity is as important, as central to our being as biodiversity is. Now, we can think of a couple of examples of the ways in which that's changing over the last couple of centuries.
Because we only have 10 minutes officially. A second excerpt of an interview in a very different field, indigenous knowledge. We worked with Rose O'Leary, who shared with us different notions, and I
So the
will
seventh
share one
generation
of them with
principle
you.
is just that anytime that someone makes a decision, they should think about its impact 7 generations into the future, and make that decision mindfully and with care and responsibility for the health and welfare of the 7 generations into the future. The 7th generation principle also can be applied more broadly and often is. For instance, as a Washaji or Osage person, as a child, I was taught that whenever you are harvesting plants or animals, but particularly plants, you should always leave 7 plants for every one that you pick. And that's to make sure that the plants also have regeneration capacities for their 7 generations into the future. So in that way, we're not just thinking about the human 7 generations into the future, we're also thinking about all of life on this earth and its 7 generations into the future, in recognition that we need that balance in order for all of us to survive.
So that's the type of interview on which these artistic projects were built later. I will mention the last one presented here at the forum. Shadow Growth is the title, with David Archer, a scientist in climate science, in the United States, and with his colleagues, he tried to assess the social cost of carbon. So this issue is a bit stuck in the assessment of what companies are ready to pay when it comes to taxes. We call that the carbon cost, but in reality, it is the desired cost for the industrial world. So what these researchers want to do, they're trying to assess the cost when it comes to damage for future generations, the cost of each new ton put into the atmosphere. So it's a very practical study of elements that we know, the rise in ocean levels and other indicators. So I will show you how we developed the research and the artistic project around this.
The social cost of carbon is intended to capture how much future damages from climate change matter to us financially today. The costs in the deep future get discounted in the social cost of carbon, reflecting that we don't really care about the deep future so much. But the impacts of CO2 release on the climate will last much longer than we will live. And so the social cost of carbon, by reflecting our personal preferences, ends up throwing away most, like 99.9% or more of the damages in the deep future because we don't care about them so much. So the ultimate cost of carbon, we designed this to try to eliminate this discounting so that it would add up all the future costs and put them all in units of present day, dollars. Kind of like a measure of the long-term climate impacts converted into units of dollars for us today. In the ultimate cost of carbon, we tried to isolate just the climate impacts as if they were being felt by us today as if we were people that were going to live forever. We tried to treat humanity the way biologists would treat a biological population, that there would be a carrying capacity of the planet which will be compromised in the future by sea level rise and by temperature changes that sort of move us outside of the agricultural best climate. So the paper is intended to translate the very difficult to conceptualize longevity of the climate impacts into units that mean something to us, dollars.
Right. So what's interesting is that when we worked on this paper with David Archer, is that if we start putting the model to work, and if you're confronting it to economic growth, you see that about every country in the world is proud of having. We can really understand the social cost of carbon and the projections in the future. We can also measure the cost of growth produced since the beginning of the industrial era. So no, we're not using these figures to prove anything, but we just want to define some trends and to understand our relationship with the economy. If you look at the global north and the global south, we can see that on the one hand, what the historical responsibility of and liability of the North in terms of economic growth, and we also understand that both growth and carbon emissions and the negative impacts quantified in dollars in the South is beyond measure. So you can see all the tools that can be used for a potential climatic arbitration that would take place in the future. So I'll skip and I'll try to present the installation itself. So we're presenting the various graphs and the quantifications in graphs that we have set up here. So this is an exhibition in Holland where we reconstituted the growth of the Netherlands since the beginning of the industrial era. We are projecting the shadow that would be neglected, the shadow of the economic growth that would be neglected. So thank you very much, and we'll be here all week long, so happy to talk about it if you have any questions. Thank you. I'll be here with Marie-Ange as well.